Season 2, Episode 25 of our monologue series. This is How Structure Becomes Behavior. I want you to experience something just for a moment. Imagine you're a military pilot in training. I want you to feel the tension of your shoulder straps and the lap belt. And I want you to experience advancing the throttle. Feel the seat pressing up under you and the aircraft climbing away. And then you hear it. It's the sound of the engine. And that engine note drops, maybe half a tone. And then a voice comes through your headset. The voice is calm, it's flat, and it says these three words: practice engine failure. And now you experience everything at once. You experience the airspeed bleeding back. The horizon rises up in the windscreen as the nose comes down. A field off the left wing, you see it. It's green, it's close enough, it looks long enough. In flight training, we drilled engine failure response until it became an unconscious, competent response. Instantly lower the nose, establish the best glide speed, pick the field, run the checks, commit. The same sequence, the same order, every time, over and over and over again. You drill it until your hands move before the thought arrives. And that drill has saved more pilots than any piece of equipment on the aircraft. There's only one thing nobody tells you about a drill like that. A drill does not know what aircraft it's in. It only knows the trigger, and it knows the sequence. And I want you to hold on to that thought, because I'll come back to it. At the end of the last piece, I left you with a question. If identity is the structure, how does it actually express itself, moment to moment? Not as a statement, but as a sequence. A repeated internal sequence that produces the same behavior reliably every time. The brain runs strategies, internal standard operating procedures. So this is our next piece. A strategy is a specific ordered sequence of internal representations that produces an outcome. A picture, then a voice, then a feeling, then an action. Or a feeling, then a picture, then a conclusion. The order matters. The sequence is the strategy. A person has a decision strategy. They'll have a motivation strategy. They'll have a strategy for getting anxious. They'll have a strategy for procrastinating. And each strategy runs the same way, almost, if not always, the same. And that's exactly what makes the behavior reliable and predictable. And every strategy has the same skeleton, the same structure. This is called a TOTE. The strategy tests. Is it time to run the strategy? Then it operates the strategy. Then it tests again. Do we need to keep running the strategy? And if we don't need to keep it, we can exit. But if we need to keep it, we operate again. The system runs a test. Is the condition met? If not, let's keep operating. So it does something. And then it tests again. And when that condition is met, it can exit. Now, this was described in 1960 by a group of researchers, and they called it TOTE. TOTE. It is the loop underneath every reliable behavior a person runs. Once you can see this loop, this TOTE, you can see the behavior as a structure, not a mystery. And here's the reframe that changes the work. A problem is usually not a malfunction. A problem is a strategy running reliably and producing an unwanted outcome. The client who gets anxious in a specific such situation is not failing. They are succeeding at running an anxiety strategy. The sequence fires in order every time. It works. And that client's not broken. Their strategy is intact. And that's the good news. Because an intact sequence is something you can map and something you can change. If behavior is a sequence, then it can be reverse engineered. And that's what modeling is. You can model excellence. Take a person who does something really, really well. recover the exact internal sequence they run to do it. And you can model the problem, recover the exact sequence that produces the stuck state. Either way, you're doing the same thing. You're making the invisible sequence explicit so it can be worked with. And because a strategy is a sequence, you do not have to fight the whole thing. You interrupt it. A sequence that gets broken before it completes does not produce its outcome. Break the chain at the right length and the behavior does not arrive. So we don't need willpower. Willpower tries to overcome the outcome, overcome the sequence. Pattern interruption changes the sequence that was producing it. Hold the whole through line now. A strategy runs on the submodality codes that we talked about in an earlier session. It's directed by the language we talked about in Pillar 7. And it expresses an identity frame that we talked about last session. And it's often triggered by an unresolved affective memory. What am I saying here? I'm saying that a strategy is learned in an event, an affective memory. Affective memory resolution is a process of resolving emotionally encoded neural patterns that continue to influence physiology, perception, and behavior. When you resolve the memory at the base of strategy, the strategy can collapse on its own. It lost its trigger. And when it does not collapse, you resequence it directly. You install a new sequence. Now, the question I hear constantly, why do I keep doing the thing I've already decided to stop? Well, the decision to stop is content, and the strategy is structure. The decision to run it or not run it doesn't change the sequence. And the sequence, once triggered, still runs on schedule, in order, exactly as it did the time before. You stop a strategy by changing the sequence, and you change the sequence by dealing with the affective memory. Next question we get is, can you build a new pattern without relying on willpower? 100%. Willpower is what you need when you're fighting an intact strategy. Install a new sequence, and there's nothing to fight. The nervous system runs the new strategy because it's now the sequence that is there. Needing willpower is the cost of not having resequenced an inappropriate strategy. Now, another question we face is, why does some change feel effortless and other change feels like dragging a weight uphill? Effortless change is change at the level of the sequence, deep within the unconscious mind. The strategy itself gets updated. Effortful change is change that is at the level of outcome. I don't like the outcome, I just fight it. The strategy is intact and the client is overriding it, rep by rep forever. The best work is to make change structurally, so it runs on its own. So if you take one thing from this presentation, from this monologue, take this. Behavior is not a mystery. It's a sequence. It's a strategy. Has a trigger, has an operating system, has an exit. An internal standard operating procedure that runs the same way every time. A problem is usually a strategy running perfectly and producing an unwanted result, which means the work you need to do is to map the strategy, the sequence, interrupt it, and install a new sequence. You change that SOP, that standard operating procedure, and the behavior follows. Willpower not required. And this brings us to the final question in this series. If submodalities, language, identity, and strategies are the layers a practitioner works with, what sequences the practitioner? What's a great question. Practitioners get their own reliable SOP, not on their own. They get it by learning it. They get it by learning proper techniques. They learn it by practicing those techniques with clients. So if you want to learn to map, to interrupt, to resequence strategies clinically, we offer a certification program. And if you're interested in that, click the link in the show notes, and there's a link to a consultation. We'll see you in the next monologue.